Hey there, in this video we are going to start by looking at the Cartesian plane, and we will look at some vocabulary and then also some ordered pairs that go along with that coordinate plane. So the Cartesian plane or coordinate plane is a two-dimensional coordinate system set up by two perpendicular lines. So remember, perpendicular means they intersect at a 90-degree angle, so like this. And these are called your axes. So we have one horizontal axis, and that is called the x-axis. So that's going to be this one. And then we have one vertical axis, and that is going to be your y-axis, and that's going to be the one that goes up and down. Where they cross or where they meet or intersect, that point is called the origin, and that's often indicated with an O in that spot. All right, now looking at an example down here, we see that from that origin, from that center point right here where the two axes meet, the numbers will start counting from that origin. And if I'm going to the right on the x-axis, it's going positive, it's going up. If I'm going to the left, it's getting into the negatives, it's getting lower numbers. Remember, -5, -6, as it gets further and further to the left, those numbers are smaller. And then same concept with the y-axis, but up and down. So up is going +1, +2, +3, +4, so on and so on. And then going down, we are going into the negative numbers along the y-axis. The x and y axes divide the plane into 4 infinite regions, and those are called quadrants. So we typically use Roman numerals to indicate the name of each of those quadrants. So one of those, for example, this quadrant over here, which again, it is an infinite region, so it does continue beyond what we see on this paper, but that is quadrant 1. Quadrant 2 is going to be this quadrant over here, this region over here. Then we have quadrant 3 on the lower left, and then we have quadrant 4 on the lower right. And so again, we typically use Roman numerals to depict each of those quadrants. Now let's talk about what an ordered pair is. So an ordered pair refers to two numbers that are written in a certain order, and they describe a point on that Cartesian plane, so on the coordinate plane or the Cartesian plane. So it indicates, for example, if I pick this point right here, there is an x and a y value that go together in that order, x, y, to specifically tell me where that point is located. To represent an ordered pair, we always write it inside parentheses separated by a comma, and the first number is always your x coordinate, and the second number is always your y coordinate. So x, again, is the first element, y is the second. The order is significant, so we can't necessarily interchange the position of the numbers. There are very few ordered pairs that work when you swap the first and the second number. And by that, I mean if it is the exact same number, for example, 1, 1, that would be 1, 1 if I switched it. But otherwise, typically it does matter the order that you put them in. So for example, 1, let's say 2, if I had 1, 2, 2, 1 is a very different point. Those do not mean the same thing. So keep that in mind. The order of those numbers does matter. And then on a Cartesian plane, an ordered pair x, y is defined as the coordinates of a point such that x is the x-coordinate, so that tells us when we're plotting it where it is along the x-axis, and then y is the y-coordinate that tells us where it goes up and down. So let me give you a couple examples of multiple ordered pairs. So for example, we could have 4, 3. That could be an ordered pair, or -3, 2. Or maybe it's 0, -2, or maybe it's 1, 0. So those are just some examples of ordered pairs. Now, there are an infinite number of ordered pairs, but these are just some examples to give you an idea that they could be positives, negatives, zeros. It is all fair game. So let's go ahead and talk about plotting points on a coordinate plane. So to plot a point, x, y, on the coordinate plane, we're going to follow these steps. We always start at the origin. So we're always going to start at the place where the x and the y axis meet. Then we move over x units to the right or to the left. So it'll go right if it's a positive x, it'll go left if it's a negative x. Now from that spot, you do not go back to the origin, but from that spot, we move over y units, either up if it's a positive y or down if it's a negative y. And then finally, we will place a point in that location, and that is your ordered pair represented as a point on the coordinate plane. So let's try plotting some points. So if we start looking at this coordinate plane here, we see that we have an x-axis and we have a y-axis, and we have some numbers labeled along those. So let's start with point A, and we'll work our way down to F, and we'll plot each of these. Additionally, they do want us to write each quadrant that the point lies in, or if it's not in a quadrant, which axis it lies on, X or Y. So let's start with point A, 3, 5. So starting at the origin, we go 3 to the right because it is a positive x. So remember, x is always first, y is always second. And so along the x-axis, we go 1, 2, 3. We don't put a point right there, but from that spot, we then move based on the y value. So the y values are either going to go up if it's a positive y or down if it's a negative y. So we see positive 5 as our y value. So we'll go up 5, we'll put a point, and then we're going to go ahead and label that A because that's what it says right here. Now let's do point B, -4, 5. So again, we have our x and our y. From your origin at the center, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left. So we're hovering right here over the -4. And then we move our way up 5, and we put a point, and we call that point B. And again, that tells us right here which letter to label it. All right, and then let's look at C. So -1, -2. So from the origin, we'll go -1. So that's going to be left 1 on the x-axis, and then down 2 because it is a -2 for the y value. So that's going to go right here, and we'll call that C. Next, we have D, which has an x value of 2 and a y value of -1. So from the origin, we will go 2 to the right, and then down 1, put a point, and that is going to be the point D. Next, we have 0, 4. So 0, 4 is our x and our y coordinate. From the origin, we go 0 left or right because 0 is the x coordinate. We do not move left or right. So we're actually going to stay where we're at on the origin, and we're going to go based on our y value of 4. We're going to go up 4 and put a point right here. So that is our point E, and that is on the y-axis. All right, and then F. So with F, we have, let's do green. With F, we have -3, 0. So again, we have x and we have y. So from our origin, we are going to go -3. So left 3, right here, we're hovering over that -3. Now y is 0. That means we move 0 in the y direction. 0 is not positive, it's not negative. We don't move anywhere because the y value is 0. So this is our point for F. So let's run through those for the quadrant. With each of these, remember this is quadrant 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So we can go ahead and name each of these. So for point A, that is in quadrant 1. Point B is in quadrant 2. Point C is in quadrant 3. Point D is in quadrant 4. Now 0, 4 is on the y-axis. It is not in a quadrant, so it is on the y-axis. And then point F is on the x-axis. It is not in a quadrant either. So now we're going to go the other way around. So we are given a graph this time with points A, B, C, D, and E, and we are going to write the ordered pair, which is going to be written with a set of parentheses and a comma in between. Our first number is going to be our x-coordinate, and our second number is going to be our y-coordinate. And then we will also determine which quadrant that the point lies in. So let's start with point A. So to figure out where point A is, you can start like you were going to plot that point. Start from the origin, and you're going to see, do I go left or do I go right for x? Because remember, when we're given an ordered pair, we always go either right or left first based on that x coordinate, that first number. So we see that we're going to go right to get to the A, and we stop at this 3, and then we would go up. So 3 is going to be your x coordinate because that's what lines up on the x-axis with the point A. And then you would go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see that if you look to the left here, the 4 is lining up with the point A on the y-axis, so that is going to be your y coordinate. So 3, 4 is the ordered pair for point A right here. So 3, 4 represents point A, and that is in quadrant 1. So now let's do the same thing with point B. So from the origin, this time we're going to go left, and it will be left 3. So negative 3 is going to be our x coordinate because we go left 3, and then we go up 2, and that's going to be your y coordinate. So this is in quadrant 2. So remember, this is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Point C, from the origin, we go left, but then we go down this time. So we go left 2, and then we make our way down 1, 2, 3, 4. So negative 2 is your x coordinate, and then negative 4 is your y coordinate. Then we have point D. So point D is going to be from the origin going to the right, 6, and then we would go down 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be 6 to the right, which is positive, but then we go down 3, and down is always negative, so that is negative 3. So 6, negative 3 is that ordered pair. And we skip the quadrant on the last one. So going back to C for a second, the quadrant on that one is going to be quadrant 3. Now the quadrant on number 4, point D, that is quadrant 4. Remember, we use those Roman numerals to represent the quadrants. And then finally, point E. Notice point E is the point that intersects the x and the y-axis. So that is going to be the point 0, 0, the origin. And there is no quadrant for that. That, again, would just be called the origin. There is no quadrant. So today we looked at a coordinate plane or a Cartesian plane. And remember our x and our y-axis. X is going to be the horizontal axis. Y is going to be the vertical axis. We have 4 quadrants. We have quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. And that point in the center that is the intersection of the x-axis and the y-axis is your origin. Additionally, we talked about ordered pairs. So remember that ordered pairs are always going to be x, y, and they tell you where to move from the origin along the x-axis, and then from that spot, where to move up and down for the y point or the y coordinate. So again, that's how you plot points using your ordered pair, and then naming ordered pairs from points we talked about. Basically, you're doing the same thing. You're figuring out from the origin, did I go right, then down? Did I go right, then up? Did I go left, then up? Left, then down? Where did I go to get to that point? And that's going to help you name it x, y. X always goes first, and your y coordinate always goes second.